A village was wiped out in the battle against the demon lord. A little boy named Lloyd stood before the ruins, his eyes haunted by trauma too deep for his young age. He had lost everything. One day, a woman came across the ruins and saw Lloyd standing alone amidst the devastation. Overcome with guilt, knowing her own negligence had played a part in this destruction, she decided to take him in. She brought Lloyd into her home, offering him a new life, and began to teach him magic. Her name was Merlin, and her first lesson for Lloyd was the flame spell. After a brief demonstration, she told Lloyd that unless he figured out how to cast it by himself, he wouldn't be getting any dinner that day. Miraculously, by nightfall, Lloyd managed to produce a small flame. However, when he proudly showed it to Merlin, she extinguished it with a simple breath and then summoned a wall of fire to scold him for not casting it properly. Still, she allowed him to eat since he had technically succeeded. The next day, Merlin introduced Lloyd to water magic. She swept her foot along the ground and conjured a small spout of water. Lloyd followed suit and managed to slightly dampen the ground. Pleased with himself, he looked to Merlin, but she wasn't impressed. To show him what true water magic looked like, she summoned a massive wave and drenched him completely. Over time, Lloyd's training continued, with Merlin subjecting him to harsh punishments and relentless lessons. But surprisingly, her brutal methods paid off. By winter, Lloyd's magical abilities had improved significantly. He could now summon a snow sculpture of Merlin with ease. It was a sweet gesture, but Merlin, as usual, refused to show appreciation. Instead, she hijacked the snow sculpture, used it to grab Lloyd, and dramatically enlarged it to demonstrate her superior control over ice magic. The sculpture eventually collapsed, and Lloyd fell. But by now, the two had developed a strong mutual understanding. Pulling himself from the snow, Lloyd declared that he would put even more effort into his magic. Merlin, for once, smiled at him approvingly. As time passed, one morning, Merlin lay sprawled on her couch, nursing a wicked hangover from drinking too much wine the previous night. Lloyd came by to check on her and asked if she was all right. Groaning, she admitted she felt terrible. Wanting to help, Lloyd placed his hand on her forehead and used healing magic. Within seconds, her hangover faded and she felt significantly better. She sat up, gave Lloyd a grateful hug, and thanked him. Then, without missing a beat, she declared it was time to resume his magic training and promptly dragged him back outside. Months passed in this manner, with Lloyd's abilities steadily growing. Then one day, Merlin received a mysterious book that deeply unsettled her. Just as she was processing the contents, Lloyd knocked on her door to call her for dinner. She answered that she'd be right there, but accidentally dropped the book in front of him. When Lloyd picked it up, a surge of overwhelming knowledge flooded into his mind, and he collapsed. Merlin was stunned. Lloyd possessed the traits of the prophesied chosen one. Knowing this, she carried him to bed, and determined not to let him repeat her own mistakes, cast a subtle spell on him with a gentle kiss on his forehead. She refused to let him grow arrogant with power the way she once did. The next day, training resumed. Merlin took Lloyd into the forest to practice white magic. Focusing on a single fruit, Lloyd used his power to ripen it. Impressed, Merlin praised him, but reminded him there was much more to learn. Placing her hand on a tree, she cast a spell that caused the entire tree to bloom with vibrant greenery. That night, as they studied together, Merlin told Lloyd about orcs that possessed rare magic, allowing them to control monsters. While reading, Lloyd stumbled across a passage about ancient magic, but when he asked about it, Merlin's expression turned stern. She firmly told him that he didn't need to learn anything about it. One of Merlin's training drills involved summoning a magical staff instantly. When Lloyd failed to do so fast enough, she struck him with her own staff and warned him never to grow complacent, no matter how powerful he became. Lloyd took the warning to heart and vowed to stay committed to his training. In the next lesson, Merlin introduced him to magic stones, solidified concentrations of mana so potent they could convert surrounding objects into more magic stones. A few months later, Merlin brought Lloyd deep into the wilderness. Handing him a knife, she told him he had to survive alone in the forest and make it back home within a week. Before he could protest, she vanished into the woods. Not long after, a huge wolf emerged and attacked Lloyd. He ran for his life and climbed a tree to escape. He doubted his white magic could defeat such a beast, so his only hope was to get home without facing more monsters. Using magic to scan the area, he realized just how far he'd strayed. Left with no choice, he began navigating his way back, using the nights to study and improve his spells. Several days passed like this. One night, Lloyd stepped on a branch, alerting a massive spider to his presence. Panicked, he bolted in the opposite direction, using a haste spell to outrun it. After a grueling journey, he finally reached home and collapsed at the doorstep. When Merlin found him, she was genuinely proud of his resilience and survival instincts. Years went by. One day, while cleaning, Lloyd found a book on Merlin's desk about a town. Curious, he asked if he could borrow it, and she told him to keep it. By now, Lloyd had nearly completed his training, and Merlin no longer subjected him to endless lessons. However, she still had him help with magical experiments every other day, relying on his exceptional skill in magic development. Lloyd didn't mind. He was happy that she finally saw him as an equal, but he hadn't slept in days, as Merlin constantly kept him awake for experiments. Exhausted and longing for a different life, Lloyd grew more fascinated with the idea of the town. One morning, Merlin came to Lloyd's room to enlist his help again, but he was gone. She found the book open on his desk and immediately knew where he had gone. Meanwhile, Lloyd arrived at the town and was amazed by its lively streets and vibrant atmosphere. It was his first time seeing such a place. After buying a simple loaf of bread, he realized he had no money left and needed a job fast. Just then, a flyer for adventurers flew into his face. Without hesitation, Lloyd applied. Unknown to him, a cloaked man was tailing him from the shadows, clearly intrigued by Lloyd's decision. After joining an adventurer party, Lloyd and his new teammates headed to a castle to face a massive cyclops. During the intense battle, the party leader Alan shouted at the healer, Sheena, to restore his health. Just as she prepared to act, Lloyd silently cast an advanced buff spell that enhanced everyone's stats. Though none of them realized it was his doing, they all felt suddenly empowered. The archer landed a perfect shot in the Cyclops' eye, and Rena, using her shield, managed to block one of the monster's punches with surprising ease. All the while, Lloyd remained silent, content to support from the shadows, never seeking recognition. Alan, on the other hand, didn't question his sudden surge in strength during the battle, and confidently delivered the finishing blow to the Cyclops, fully convinced that the victory was thanks to his own power. However, Rena began to suspect that Lloyd had something to do with the unexpected power boost. After the battle, the party returned to town, where Alan was hailed as a hero. The Cyclops had been considered so powerful that no one else had been able to defeat it, making their victory a major event. The reward for slaying the creature was enormous, but Alan gave Lloyd only 5 gold coins, claiming it was a fair cut since Lloyd was just a rookie D-rank adventurer. Lloyd accepted the payment without complaint. When Alan suggested they all toast to their success, Lloyd politely excused himself, not wanting to take part. Maya, the party's mage, took offense that Lloyd didn't want to drink with them, but Alan brushed it off, saying it was fine. After all, they could always find another white mage, and Lloyd hadn't contributed much anyway. Meanwhile, back at Merlin's home, the mysterious man who had been watching Lloyd earlier reappeared. Merlin questioned him about Lloyd's whereabouts, and the man informed her that Lloyd had reached town and already joined a famous adventurer party. Relieved to know he was safe, Merlin admitted to herself that it was time for Lloyd to explore the world on his own. As long as he didn't repeat the mistakes she had once made, she believed he'd be just fine. The man then asked if she still carried any regrets about that fateful day. Merlin's expression darkened with bitterness as she recalled her mistake back then. She hadn't anticipated the Demon Lord's willingness to self-destruct just to obtain the grimoire. That single misjudgment resulted in the destruction of an entire village, wiping out everyone nearby, including herself. Fortunately, her companion Sybil had used forbidden ancient magic to bring everyone back, but the cost was his own life. Since then, Merlin had never stopped blaming herself. Back in town, Lloyd continued supporting the hero party in silence. During every battle, whenever Alan or any team member ran into trouble, Lloyd would cast stat-boosting spells or magical support to give them an edge. Thanks to his efforts, the team enjoyed an almost flawless winning streak, with everyone performing at their best. Yet, no one realized just how much weight Lloyd was carrying behind the scenes. One night, Rena was studying defensive techniques in her room when Alan barged in. Curious about what she was doing, he listened as she shared her confusion. Monster attacks didn't seem to be hitting her shield as hard as they used to. Alan agreed, mentioning he'd felt the same, but assumed it was just his natural skill improving. Rena pointed out that he hadn't been training recently, so it didn't make sense that he'd suddenly gotten stronger. Elsewhere that same night, deep in the forest, a group of guards were finishing up their patrol when one of them suddenly cried out in pain. The others turned in horror to see a massive earth golem towering above their fallen comrade. In that instant, one of the guards knew they were all doomed. The next morning, The captain of the guard approached Alan to request his party's assistance. He explained that the guards who had been on patrol the previous night were brutally slaughtered. Alan immediately agreed to help, assuming that taking down a golem wouldn't be too difficult. Later that day, using Lloyd's tracking magic, they traced the earth golem to a cave hidden behind a waterfall. With Lloyd quietly providing magical support as always, the team swiftly took down the stone monster. However, before they could catch their breath, a demon appeared and summoned another golem from the falling rocks above, throwing them back into battle. Lloyd observed the demon closely and noticed that it was using a staff embedded with a magic stone to control the golem. Recognizing the danger, Lloyd knew he had to act fast before the situation escalated further. He cast a precision spell and instructed Lulu to fire an arrow at the demon. Taken aback by Lloyd's sudden command, Lulu hesitated for a moment, but ultimately obeyed. Miraculously, her arrow struck its target. Lloyd then told Mia to teleport the staff to him. As soon as it appeared in his hands, he quickly cast a spell to seal its magic. Meanwhile, Alan grew increasingly irritated with Lloyd for giving orders. Feeling that his authority was being challenged, Alan charged forward, determined to deliver the final blow himself. But as the golem prepared to crush him, Lloyd enhanced his own speed with magic and shoved Alan out of harm's way just in time. Despite being saved, Alan was furious and snapped at Lloyd for interfering. Ignoring the fact that Lloyd had just saved his life, Alan then went on to kill the golem himself. Once they returned to town, Alan, still fuming, decided to fire Lloyd from the party for being a nuisance. He accused Lloyd of being lazy and claimed that he had never contributed much. Having grown up hearing from Merlin that his powers were useless, Lloyd instinctively believed the fault was his own. Without arguing, he accepted being kicked out. Over the next 3 days, he searched for a new party to join, but it proved to be difficult, as most groups already had a white mage. Then, by chance, a girl at the guild reception desk was desperately pleading for a white mage. The receptionist pointed toward Lloyd, and the moment the girl saw him, she rushed over, grabbed his hand, and immediately recruited him into her party. Yui dragged Lloyd off to meet her party members, and when they saw her back so soon, they were surprised. They assumed she wasn't able to find a new white mage for their party, since it would be practically impossible to find one on such short notice. To their shock, however, Yui pointed at Lloyd and said he would be joining their party. There was just one problem with that. Yui had dragged Lloyd there without explaining anything to him, so he never actually agreed to join their party in the first place. The others had a feeling it was too good to be true, so they told Yui that they should just give up on the quest they were supposed to take, since without a white mage, it would be far too risky. They also mentioned that there was no guarantee Lloyd would even be strong enough to replace Clum. Everyone seemed to agree that taking the quest as they were now would be too dangerous. But Yui didn't want to let their client down because she knew how much help they really needed. Lloyd didn't understand all the details, but he could tell the quest was important, so he asked if they could just let some other party handle it instead. Unfortunately, the others explained that wasn't an option. The quest was A-rank difficulty, which meant only parties that were A-rank or higher were allowed to accept it. But all of the other A-rank parties in the capital were already out on missions, so no one else was available. Yui's party was S-rank, which meant they qualified for the quest, but without a white mage, they were missing a crucial role. According to guild rules, parties could only work with registered members, so they couldn't simply borrow a white mage from another group, and finding one who was unaffiliated on such short notice was practically impossible. Lloyd wanted to help them, but he genuinely believed he wasn't strong enough to be of use to an S-rank team. Before he could say anything though, Yui confidently asserted that everything would be fine as long as Lloyd was with them. The group then decided to take Lloyd out into a field to test his abilities before considering him as a party member, even though Lloyd still hadn't agreed to any of this. Once they arrived, Yui asked Lloyd to demonstrate his power. Lloyd felt anxious because he assumed his abilities would be disappointing compared to what an S-rank team expected. Daga stepped in, saying it wasn't fair to just put Lloyd on the spot without explaining what spell they wanted him to use. So Yui agreed and told Lloyd to cast enhancement magic on all of them. Lloyd was shocked because that sounded far too easy to be an S-rank trial. To make sure, he asked her if she really wanted him to cast enhancement magic on everyone at once, and she confirmed that was exactly what she wanted. This confused him even more because he had cast enhancement magic on multiple targets countless times and had never had any trouble with it. At first, he thought there must be some hidden requirement he didn't know about. But no, the test was as simple as it sounded. The others even doubted whether he could do it at all, but Lloyd assured them he could, though he still didn't understand why such a basic spell was being used as a test. Lloyd summoned his staff and prepared to cast the spell, but Yui was distracted when she noticed him summon the staff out of nowhere. She asked where it came from, and he casually explained it was just storage magic. Nothing impressive. He directed her attention back to the enhancement magic he had cast, and at first, Yui didn't even realize he had already done it, but when she stopped to think, she noticed she felt stronger than before. The others confirmed they felt the same effect, but something about it seemed different than usual. Yui tested it by drawing her sword and swinging at a tree, and to her astonishment, she sliced straight through it in a single effortless strike. She could hardly believe it, but Lloyd just shrugged, saying that was normal for the enhancements he cast. While Yui and the others were expecting only a strength boost, Lloyd thought that would be too easy, so he had also cast defense, speed, mana, and vitality buffs on all of them simultaneously. The party was stunned into silence, staring at Lloyd in disbelief. Misinterpreting their silence as disappointment, Lloyd assumed he had done something wrong and apologized for wasting their time. He began to leave, thinking they didn't want someone like him. But Yui quickly called him back. She refused to let someone as talented as Lloyd go, and she also wanted to learn more about him. When she asked, she found out that Lloyd used to be part of the hero party. Yui was amazed, since that party was famous throughout the kingdom, but Lloyd explained he was fired for lacking power and didn't think he was useful. Dagas and the others couldn't believe it, since they had never seen anyone cast so many types of enhancement magic at once. Lloyd, however, insisted there must be plenty of people in the world stronger than him, and suggested they should just try to get the old white mage Clum to return. That, however, wasn't an option. Clum had a younger sister who was very sick, and up until recently, she had been trying to balance adventuring with caring for her. The constant strain wore her down until she could no longer focus properly in battle, so she quit to avoid being a liability to the party. The others knew Clum only left because of her sister, and although they were sad to see her go, they respected her decision. Normally, they would just attempt quests without a white mage, but A-rank missions were especially dangerous without a dedicated healer. Lloyd could tell everyone deeply cared about Clum, and wanting to help, he asked about her sister's illness. Yui explained that Clum's sister was afflicted with a strange sickness that was turning her body into magistones. Lloyd recalled reading about cases like this, where magis energy corrupted living things, and had been researching ways to reverse the process. He immediately told Yui to take him to Clum's house. When they arrived, Clum was surprised to see Yui with a stranger, but she let them in. Lloyd politely apologized in advance for what might sound rude, but asked for every detail about how her sister got sick. Clum explained that she and her sister Sylvie used to adventure together until one day during a quest, Sylvie was injured and collapsed. She had been unconscious ever since. Yui asked if it was a monster that hurt her, but Clum admitted she didn't know because Sylvie was already collapsed when they found her. Lloyd asked about Sylvie's symptoms, but Clum said it would be easier to show him. She led them to Sylvie's room and warned them to brace themselves. As soon as the door opened, an overwhelming wave of unpleasant mana washed over them, all coming from Sylvie. Clum removed the covers from her sister's body, revealing that Sylvie's arms and legs had already started transforming into magistones. This was the first time Lloyd had seen such an advanced case, and he was shocked by how severe it was. Sylvie's mana had gone completely out of control, consuming her body bit by bit, and if nothing was done, it would eventually consume her completely. Lloyd asked Clum to allow him to examine her more closely, explaining he had an idea that might cure her. Clum was doubtful, since the best healers in the country had already failed, but Lloyd insisted Sylvie's condition was caused by being pierced by a high-purity magistone. He asked if the cave where she was injured had unusually high mana density, and Clum confirmed it did, since their quest that day was to collect magis. This matched Lloyd's deduction perfectly. He then asked to see Sylvie's wound, and just as he suspected, it appeared a magistone had entered her body through the injury, flooding her with corrupted mana. Believing he had found the cause, Lloyd asked Clum to trust him as he attempted a risky procedure. He began by casting a spell to drain the excess mana from Sylvie's body, but the dark energy took a heavy toll on him. He knew that if he removed too much, she could die from mana depletion, so he carefully balanced draining her energy while simultaneously casting healing spells to stabilize her. Clum noticed the heal spell he used looked unfamiliar, so she asked about it. Lloyd explained he designed it himself as an inferior heal, which consumed far more mana than usual. He was using it deliberately to burn off the excess energy he was absorbing, preventing himself from being overwhelmed. Yui didn't fully understand, but Clum was struck, knowing just how impressive this feat was. He was maintaining two kinds of magic at once while enduring incredible strain. Slowly but surely, Sylvie's transformation began to reverse. The Magistone corruption receded as Lloyd continued draining and healing until at last her body returned to normal. Exhausted, Lloyd nearly collapsed once the procedure was done. Moments later, Sylvie opened her eyes for the first time since the accident, and Clum was moved to tears at seeing her little sister awake again. She thanked Lloyd and Yui profusely, overwhelmed with gratitude. However, once Sylvie was fully recovered, Clum explained that she intended to stay by her side and adventure with her again, which meant she wouldn't be rejoining Yui's party. Yui was disappointed, but she understood Clum's choice, knowing that nothing was more important to her than her sister's well-being.
The story begins with a boy called Arel sitting with his family for lunch. Arel's father feels surprised by how calm his son is, saying that he couldn't sleep at all, thinking about what hero class his son would get. His mother also exclaims that she is excited, while his older sister feels confident that her brother will outshine all of his classmates. Their mother agrees with her daughter, thinking that her son will attract all the girls with his charm, which makes Arel's sister suddenly worry that he might be taken away from her. However, Arel is more in touch with reality than his family, believing that he will just turn out to be another average guy. In Arel's world, hero classes are gifts from a higher being, granted to youngsters when they turn 10, allowing them to specialize in various skills. Once it is time for the blessing ceremony, all the students gather in school, and a priest begins with the first boy. He puts his hand on the boy's forehead, and the boy quickly sees an image of fire and hammers, confirming that he will be a blacksmith. The boy runs back to his father, beaming with joy, and then the priest starts to work on all of the remaining students one by one. Finally, once it is Arel's turn, his sister says with excitement that he will get a special blessing for sure. Arel walks up to the priest while his family cheers proudly for him. People around them start whispering in envy about Arel, believing that he will get advanced classes like his parents, Farah and Leon, who are known as the Sword Princess and Archmage. Once Arel gets close to the priest, he closes his eyes and focuses his mind, but he fails to see anything. The priest feels surprised that he doesn't have a blessing, and then announces that Arel is a rare case of a classless hero. Arel's family instantly loses their excitement, thinking that they got completely scammed, and that his fate is ruined as a talentless failure. The very next day, Arel begins practicing ordinary swordsmanship. His parents assure him that they will not kick him out of the house. Arel tells them that he is doing fine and just doesn't want to be a freeloader, while his sister promises that she will keep supporting him no matter what. Seeing how concerned his family is, Arel once again reminds them that he has always been practicing swordsmanship with his mother, so he can still be useful despite not having a class. However, deep inside, he thinks that his mother is an awful teacher because she always blows him away in training with her incredible strength. As he finishes his explanation, Arel's mother feels happy that her son is so wise, while his father thinks that he might actually be able to get a real job in the future. Seeing them all fawn over him, Arel gets sick of his family's attention and leaves to train. As he walks into the training ground, Arel finds two swordsman-class students dueling it out with their swords. While fighting, the boys notice Arel and ask what he is doing here without a class. He calmly tells them that he is going to train just like them, but the boys laugh and tell him that they are only having fun with their swords since they don't actually have to train because their class gives them strength automatically. Then they offer to show Arel how much skill they have gained from their class and start sparring once again. While watching them fight, Arel notices how smooth their movements are because of the swordsman class, and then asks them to fight him. One of the boys bursts out laughing at his audacity for challenging them without a class, but Arel simply thinks that he doesn't need one. Feeling insulted, the boy accepts Arel's challenge to teach him a lesson. Before fighting, the boy asks Arel to make sure he still has the protection blessing, which is a temporary shield everyone gains at birth that recharges when the user isn't receiving damage. Arel nods and confirms that he won't lose his life to the boy's powerful attacks and tells him to get ready for the duel. Enraged by his constant taunting, the boy charges at Arel and swings his sword, but to his shock, Errol easily parries it. Then Errol dodges another slash before locking the boy in a parry. The boy's partner thinks he is just having fun and tells him to finish the match quickly, but the boy tells him that Errol isn't so easy to fight. As they continue trading parries, the boy realizes that he can't beat Errol on his own, so he cheats and asks his partner to gang up on him. The other boy jumps at Errol from behind, but he senses the attack and dodges it at the last second. Watching the two boys argue with each other, Errol realizes that their class doesn't help them with teamwork, and he swoops in to finish them both off. The boys notice him coming, but suddenly Errol vanishes from their sight before appearing under one of them and knocking him clean out with a jaw punch. As his teammate falls, the other boy rushes to attack Errol, but he trips over his own friend, giving Errol the chance to knock him out as well. With both boys on the ground, Errol calmly announces that he won the fight, but they get angry and claim that he attacked them while their guard was down. As they ask Errol for a rematch, he easily agrees. However, before it starts, a boy behind them warns the others not to try it, reminding them that they can't make cheap excuses like that if they fail on the battlefield. After the red-haired boy tells them they're a disgrace to all swordsmen, one of the two boys tries talking back to him, but his friend reminds him of the red-haired boy's high status. The redhead then walks up to Errol and asks if he is the son of the sword princess Farah. When Errol nods, the boy praises him for learning some solid swordsmanship from his mother. However, he reminds Errol that the two swordsmen he took down are just inexperienced children. Then, pointing his sword at him, he challenges him to a real fight. The boy declares that he will prove the real power of the swordsman class, while the two other boys whisper and wonder if he is the son of the village security captain, Evan. The boy confirms his identity, and Errol remembers that his father used to contact his mother to hunt monsters. Looking at him, Errol thinks that the cute boy looks nothing like his father, and wonders if he will also turn into a gruff-looking man when he grows older. The boy's shoulders start trembling as he praises his father for being a powerful swordsman and wise mentor. He says that it's unfair that despite his father's great qualities, Errol's mother unfairly stole away his father's title of the village's strongest swordsman. At his jealous words, Errol realizes that the boy is just taking out his frustration on him because he hates his mother. The redhead feels embarrassed to get called out, but asks Errol if he thinks the same. Errol calmly confirms that his mother is indeed the strongest person in their village, but the boy insists that he inherited the best swordsman talent from his father, so he will defeat Errol to prove that his family is superior. After calming down, the boy tells Errol that he already became a swordsman a year ago and has been training hard under his father ever since. With his dedicated practice, the boy thinks he has no chance of losing. However, Errol reminds him that he also received guidance from his powerful mother, so he's not going to lose against him either. Both boys raise their swords to begin the fight, and the redhead attacks first. Errol parries his attack and strikes back, and the two engage in a fierce battle. Watching them exchange blows, the other two boys feel shocked that Errol is keeping up with the redhead despite being classless. Watching the boy swing his sword, Errol admits that he is much stronger than the other two, but he notices that his moves are driven by anger. Errol waits for him to slip up and then attacks once he gets an opening. However, the boy suddenly unleashes a twin slice skill, which drives Errol back into a wall. The redhead feels surprised that his first slice was blocked, but he notices that Errol got injured by the second. Finally losing his calm, Errol asks about the boy's ability, and the boy explains that it is a swordsman class skill that can't be blocked by someone classless. However, Errol feels determined that he can learn to block it with enough practice, and the redhead praises his resilience. A few days later, Errol's sister watches him snore late in the morning and tries to wake him up with a kiss. He gets up before she can touch him, coldly knocking her away with his head. Errol's sister gets offended and demands an apology kiss as he leaves his room to get breakfast. Their mother smiles and serves breakfast, and the family sits down to eat together. Errol's sister asks him if he is going to train again, and he nods. This angers her, and she tells him to take it easy and let her support him. However, Errol ignores her and gets up to leave. His sister then wonders why he has been going out to train daily ever since he returned home beaten into a pulp. Farah reassures her daughter that Errol will be fine, explaining that they have a secret she doesn't know. She takes her outside and opens a chest full of broken swords, revealing just how hard Errol has been training the past few days. While his sister feels surprised, Errol's mother feels happy that her boy got inspired after dueling with other kids. Errol's determination also cheers up his sister, but she still wants to create a world where classless people like him aren't discriminated against. While her mother smiles at her noble goal, meanwhile, in a forest, RL is whacking at a training target on a tree before backing up for an attack. He then unleashes a twin slice, just like the redhead, and feels satisfied with his power. While RL thinks getting beaten up by the redhead was worth it, a goblin silently stalks him in some bushes. The goblin suddenly jumps out to attack with its club, but RL turns around and defeats it with a twin slice, feeling proud of his skill's power. Suddenly, a large monster roars behind him. He turns around, intending to report the monster's appearance to village security, but he stops after hearing a panicked scream. Finding the scream familiar, Errol quickly realizes that he doesn't have time to call security before that person gets hurt. He grabs his sword's handle and runs into the forest, mentally assuring himself that he will be fine. Once he gets close to the source, Errol peeks from a bush and finds the redhead with a bloodied arm. Then he notices a giant hobgoblin looming over the boy, and wonders why it appeared. Errol then realizes that the redhead was also practicing like him and defeated some wild goblins, which must have attracted the leading hobgoblin. While the hobgoblin backs the boy into a corner, Errol gets behind it and prepares to launch his attack from the best angle. Errol takes a deep breath to prepare, and the redhead thinks it's all over for him. The hobgoblin raises its club for the finishing blow, but suddenly, RL cuts it down with a twin slice attack. After the monster falls to the ground, Errol thinks that he has finally mastered the technique's footwork. The redhead tries to walk, but stumbles into Errol's arms. Noticing that the boy lost his protection blessing, Errol asks if he has any holy water to heal his wounds. The boy silently looks at his smashed water bottle on the ground, so RL offers him his own holy water. After he drinks it, his wounds disappear, and the redhead feels annoyed by how strong RL has gotten. Errol notices that his energy has returned, and the boy thanks him for his water before asking again about his powerful skill. Errol calmly reminds him that it's just a twin slice, but the boy asks how he learned it without a class, knowing that ordinary people can't learn special skills. Errol explains that he pushed his training to the limits for this one. The redhead feels confused, so Errol explains further that he learned the skill by adjusting to its timing and footwork. Then Errol tells the redhead that he was the most important resource since he helped him understand the skill after beating him up dozens of times with it. While the boy feels overwhelmed by this information, Errol tells him that he's been training the twin slice skill specifically to defeat him in their rematch. Feeling impressed by Errol's dedication, the redhead accepts his rematch challenge. Errol asks him if he's sure, but the boy tells him that it's the least he can do after he saved him and healed his wounds. Errol feels surprised that he knows how to repay favors, and the boy feels insulted by his low opinion of him. Soon, both boys get ready with their swords and begin their duel with a twin slice at the same time. While feeling shocked that RL blocked both of the slices, the redhead suddenly gets hit by a surprise attack. He wonders what it was, and RL tells him that he added a third slice. The redhead reminds RL that it's called twin slice, but RL explains that because he didn't get a predefined skill from a class, he can mold his technique into whatever he wants. He reveals to the boy that this was his first time successfully using the third strike, which leaves him even more frustrated. The redhead thinks that a swordsman's skill isn't supposed to lose to anyone, so Errol tells him that he'll prove it in another match. Both boys raise their swords again, and the redhead calms down, thinking that he has a speed advantage over Errol, as both of them unleash their twin slices. The redhead watches carefully for Errol's third slice. However, the third slice's speed still catches him off guard and knocks him down despite trying to block it. Errol points his sword at the defeated boy and tells him that this result was only to be expected. The redhead asks him why his third strike is so fast, so Errol explains that he actually learned the trick from him. Errol reveals that he controls his first two strikes to be slower, and then applies all of his strength to the third strike to catch his opponent off guard. Feeling completely outclassed, the redhead gnashes his teeth in defeat, and Errol walks away victorious. A few days later, as Errol's family is having dinner, Farah reveals that Evan's son has left to train at Brea. Surprised by this news, Errol asks what Brea is, and his mother explains that it is the City of Swords. She tells him that she used to train at a guild there before her marriage, and Errol feels excited to visit the city and explore his full potential as a classless hero. And that concludes episode 1.